Welcome to Gardening at 58 North. Today I'd like to show you how to grow sensitive plants from seeds. So this is what you'll expect after a few weeks. Once they've been successfully germinated, some lovely sensitive plants. You can see here when you touch them they fold up and they move quite quickly. So it's good for kids and it's quite an interesting novel plant anyway. So that's the sensitive plant there. You can see its movement. So it's a bit tricky with the sensitive plant. There's a few things you have to do right, but when you do those few things, then it actually turns out quite easy. So first of all, you'll need to get your seeds. They should look like this. They should be kind of a dark colour, and they should be quite fat. You don't want any ones that are completely thin because they won't be viable. So what you need is you need to get some water, and it needs to be quite hot. So when you put your finger in it, it should be just a tiny bit uncomfortable. Just so hot that it's a bit uncomfortable to keep it in there, but it shouldn't be so hot that it burns your finger. You should be able to keep it in there for at least 20 seconds. So the ideal temperature is 60 degrees, so if you have a thermometer you can check with that it is 60 degrees. So then just put your seeds in. There we are, nice little selection of seeds. And as you can see, they will probably just float on the surface. So the next thing you need to do is just to push them under. Basically it's the surface water tension is keeping them up. You just want to push them under the water there so that they sink down. And they should look a bit like that, so you know that they're completely soaking wet. They might not all sink at first, but as long as they're underneath the water and not floating on the surface, then that should be fine. So you want to leave them in there for probably about 20 minutes. And then once they've been soaking there for 20 minutes, the really warm temperatures will encourage them to grow. And then the next step you need to do is you need to get a sealed container. I like to use these containers, which you just get from your takeaway, your Chinese takeaway, whatever takeaway you get. So they're basically free for me, which is good. And you want to get some toilet roll, and you want to get a decent amount. So what have I got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 or 10 sheets of paper. Fold it in half and just fold it a few times so that it's a decent thickness, because this will hold the moisture. And you just want to pop it in there like so, just covering the base. So that's it covered there. What the toilet roll does is it keeps it nice and damp in there, but it doesn't let the seeds sit in water, because if the seeds were to sit inside water then they would rot off as there wouldn't be enough oxygen. So having it here with the moisture is it keeps it nice and damp, but the seeds can still breathe. So once the seeds have had a good 20 minutes soaking in the water, that's them ready to go into here. But before you put them in here, you want to make sure that this toilet paper is nice and damp. So just carefully try and evenly moisten the water, the toilet paper, sorry, with a bit of warm water. And you want it to be quite flat so that there's no folds and it's quite an even. And you want it like that. You don't want it soaking wet. So you can see when I tip it there, there's no water pooling anywhere, but to the touch it's really quite wet. So that's perfect. So the next thing you want is a sieve to sieve out the seeds from the water. I was going to add, it's best if you do this in a larger container, and the reason for that is because after 20 minutes, if it's in a small container or in a plastic container, the water cools down very quickly. So what I do is I put it in a mug here, because the mug holds the water, holds the heat, sorry, very well. And I put the water in first, let the mug equalise to the same temperature, and then I put the seeds in. Because if you pour it straight out the kettle onto the seeds, you're not entirely sure what the temperature is going to be. And if it's even a few degrees over 60 degrees, it will kill the seeds. So ideally, if you can't do it too accurately, make sure it's well below 60, just so you don't cook the seeds. So that's me just had 20 minutes of soaking them. So I'm just going to pour them into a sieve here to get them out, and just pull a few more that are stuck to the sides of this mug here, and that's them ready. You'll notice quite a few of them might sink as they slowly soak up all the water. So there we are, that's my seeds. Just give that a little shake, make sure there's not too much excess water. and I'm just going to simply flip it over and then tap it so that they will fall off onto the toilet paper there. So as you can see there, that's all the seeds gone. It's just an old sieve, this one, that's why it's so muddy. I use it for quite a lot of gardening and stuff. So there we have the seeds. You can see they've clumped a little bit, so I'm just going to pick some up and just sprinkle them a bit more evenly, because you don't want them to all germinate in the same place at the same time. So the next step is optional. The problem is when you have this in a very warm environment and it's damp and it's sealed, you will get quite a lot of mould growing sometimes. The warm water does help to alleviate that, but it doesn't completely get rid of it. So what I'm going to do is just spray it with a very weak solution of bleach. And you do want it to be very weak, because if it's too strong, it will kill the plants as the new roots come out. Now, as it's only on the surface of the seed coat, it won't damage the plants, but as soon as the roots start growing, it will. So you want to make sure, as I say, it's quite weak, it's not too strong. But these take a few days to germinate, so by the time they do germinate, a lot of the bleach will have will have finished. So the next step is you just seal it up. And this is another interesting point, which is why they're a bit different to some seeds, is they have to have an awful lot of light. So you want to put this on the sunniest windowsill you can find. If you're living in the tropics and your house is maybe 25-30 degrees and it's in direct sunshine, it may get a little bit too hot, so just keep an eye that it doesn't get too hot in here. If you're living in a temperate climate and it's about 20 degrees in your house, but you've got hot sunshine, it may get up to 40 degrees, and that's fine. You want it nice and hot. You want it inside the box about 30 degrees, which it will get to quite nicely if it's on a really sunny windowsill. So leave it there, and I'll show you a video. I'll just show you now what it looks like when they start to germinate. Now they do take quite a while. But it's quite interesting. Some of the seeds will germinate in just a few days, but the other ones can take up to 2 or 3 months to germinate. So after a few days to a week, your seeds should look like this. This has been 1 week now, and I'll show you what it looks like. So you can see some of them there are sprouting nice little white roots, that one in particular. You see right there in the middle, got a nice little white root. And there's a few more down here you can see. So you can tell when they're ready because they've got the nice little white roots coming out of the black seeds. So the next thing I'll talk about is the compost that you'll need for them. So you'll just need quite a small pot, and one of the problems with the sensitive plant is its roots can be and the stems can be quite easily killed if it's too wet and too waterlogged in the soil mix. So if you just use normal multi-purpose compost, it has a lot of peat in it and it stays quite wet, so not enough oxygen can get to the roots. So what you want to do is make a nice open mix. The one that I use and I find works really well, and is actually the one that I've been using for this sensitive plant, is a little bit of orchid compost, and that's the one with the bark. 1 part orchid compost, 1 part multi-purpose, and then probably about a tiny, just like a small pinch of perlite, which helps keep it nice and open. So this is the mix here that I've got. I'll just put it in the pot. So as you can see, there's bits of bark in there, quite a bit of perlite, but it's quite loose, it's quite open. The air can get in easily and the water can get in easily, so it doesn't damp off, because damping off is the major problem, which is when, I said before, the roots don't get enough oxygen. So you want to get your seed. You might find it easier with tweezers, but I find it easy enough just using my hands. And you just want to carefully pick up the seed without damaging the root and place it on top of the compost, just like that. Now when you place it on top, you want to make sure that the root is facing down. So you can see there, that's the seed, just that, and the root is facing down into the soil. So I'll just get a few more now and place them in. So basically, as they germinate, you just need to pick them out of the little tub that you've got them in, and place them into your growing medium. There should be quite a few germinating, but they don't all germinate at the same time. They're quite varied from when they germinate, so you might get some germinating after a few days, And as I said before, you might get some after a few months. So once they're placed in there, you just want to give it a very light covering with compost, because now they've started to germinate, they don't need any light until they emerge from the soil again. So you can cover them up with just a very thin layer, and you want to keep them covered because if their roots are exposed they will dry out and die, because it's a bit of a shock from being in such a humid environment like that. So now all you have to do is keep it just slightly watered, just a little bit moist. You don't want it too wet because they can damp off quite easily, but you don't want it too dry either because they'll dry out and die. So just nice and damp would be fine. Put it on a nice sunny windowsill, and after a few weeks you'll get some little seed leaves coming up, and after about a month or so you'll get the leaves that actually are pinnate, which is like this with all the little leaflets, and you can touch and they'll move. And these ones, as you can see, they're really good. See them closing up there. Quite exciting. So the little side ones move, but also the actual stalks go down, as you can see there. So that's how I germinate my sensitive plants, and it works quite well. If you're wondering what the seed leaves look like, this one down here, you can see those two kind of round leaves at the very base there. That's what the seed leaves look like. So that if you see them coming up in your pot, you know that's your sensitive plant successfully germinated and it's going to be fine. So just keep it in a sunny position. It's not too fussy, you can have a bit of shade. And the main thing is just keep it warm and keep it moist. You don't want it too wet, and your sensitive plants will be quite happy. So that's how I grow sensitive plants, and it works very well. There's other ways of growing them as well. If you have any other comments or recommendations, please put it in the comment section. And thanks for watching.